Hey guys, it's Maymay, and you remember last week and the week before we started doing these dragging ink backgrounds? Well, this particular piece that I had in my stash, I was shopping at Hobby Lobby and I saw a wood wall hanging that had a bunny cut out of the wood. And as soon as I saw that bunny, I thought about the die cut we have in the store and I was like, I have to try this. So this card is 100% inspired by something I saw at Hobby Lobby. So I took that drag wood piece of paper that I just showed you. This is just one of those backgrounds I made last week and have now in my stash. And I put the little bunny on there and cut it with my Cuttlebug. Now here's the thing about these stencils from Doris. They're actually dies and stencils because it cuts out the shape of the bunny, but you can also ink around it and get a cool texture, get a cool design. Can you see all of the little silver pieces on the inside of the die of the bunny? That we're going to ink and leave that mark behind. However, I will tell you, I do this very lightly because I'm doing this with, what is that, vintage photo? Couldn't remember. I do this with vintage photo, so it's very light, but you can see it if you get up close. But I think this would be super cool if you did this in like a solid color brown or a white paper and then did the stenciling on top. And all I'm doing is taking an ink blending tool and just in circular motions going from the outside in, and that's going to leave all of those stencil parts of the die. So all those Doris dies we have in the store, I think all of them work that way. A lot of them work that way. If they say die and stencil, this is what they mean. It cuts out the shape and then you can stencil over the cutouts in the middle. So I did that, and here you can see it. I think you can see it pretty good actually. You see the little leg and the ears and the little face. I think it's cute. So now I'm going to work to turn this into a card. First, got to clean out mess. Look how easy that comes off with a baby wipe. That's distress ink, and it just comes off real easy. So clean that up, clean up my work surface. Now, this is the big Martha Stewart scoreboard, and I love this scoreboard. I don't use it as much as my mini, but I do love it. One thing I love about it is the envelope tool that comes with this board. See how it lets me lay the paper on the diagonal? And I wanted this background page I have to be a little different. So I thought this is what I would do. I would put it into the envelope maker and score it on the diagonal. Now the way I'm scoring it is like this. I'm scoring a line, skip a line, skip a line. So you would come up with your own pattern, but I wanted it to be, I almost thought I was going to do it gingham, but I changed my mind and I did it like this. So it's just stripes, and I love how it turned out. So now we're just going to get ready to ink over it. We're going to drag over it just like we've done in all our dragging techniques, which I will link here and below. And I'm going to drag that ink pad barely touching over the surface just to grab some of that texture. I was going to put the bunny on just plain pink cardstock, but when I laid it there, I thought it needed something else. So that's why I did that to that mat. Now my card base is a craft colored card base from Nina. This is the textured card base that I love so much. And so I just scored that in half and creased it down with the bone folder. And we're going to get ready to do a little more prep. We're actually not ready to assemble this guy yet. So I decided I wanted to round the corners of this card. So I took my corner chomper and around the top corners, you can see there. But when you round the corner and want to mat a card, you have to round the mat as well. You can't do it once you attach them together because then it won't cut correctly. So I wanted to show you that. So I'm going to go ahead and round off the two top corners of my mat so it will match the card. This is the stamp set I'm using. It's called Hair Peeking, and I decided I wanted to stamp my greeting for the front of the card in that same distress ink color that I used for the dragging. But here's something I know about distress ink. If I were to put this on a block and stamp it, the ink would be light and it could even be kind of splotchy because it's distress ink. So I decided to take this to the MISTI so I know that I could stamp it repeatedly and get the image as dark as I want it. That was me looking over to make sure it was in the right spot. So I'm using the very same ink I used for that dragging, and I'm going to ink up this little sentiment. And then with the MISTI, you just close the door and it will stamp the image. Now the cool thing is, because I have it magneted down, everything's sitting still where it's supposed to, I can open this door back up and see if it's dark enough, and it's not, it's very pale. I can ink that again and then stamp right over it again. I actually ended up stamping this, I think, 4 times. But here's a tip. Don't smash. When you put the ink on it, don't smash that lid down. The wetter it is, the more chance you have of getting kind of the smeared halo look. Just sit that door down, let that ink transfer, give it just a good smoothing over, and that'll keep it from getting too heavily saturated. Kind of works for me anyway. Here I decide I want to do a little ribbon end on that little sentiment piece, so I just take a little slice up the middle and then 2 slices from the corner to the middle, and we get a little ribbon piece. Now for the bunny, I wanted him to have a little bit of like detail. I thought about using a satin ribbon, but I'm using him on a card and I didn't want it to be too bulky, so I decided to use this gray and white baker's twine that I had in my stash, and I simply tie a bow around his neck. That's all I'm going to do. So here, I'm tying a knot, and I'm going to use my reverse tweezers to hold that in place for me. The reason I'm using the reverse tweezers is they will hold the knot in place, almost like having somebody put their finger on the knot for you while I tie this bow. Now, I'm leaving me tying this bow in for you to see all of this because I want to show you just how much I fuss with bows, and I still don't think they turn out perfect. I spend some time on them. One thing about baker's twine I want to tell you. Don't tighten the loops down 100% before you get the bow where you want it. The reason is the tighter that center knot, the more twisty your baker's twine is whenever you pull it to adjust your loop sizes. If you've ever done this, you know what I'm talking about. You know exactly what I mean by how twisty it can get. Now, I started doing this lately. I'm tying little knots on the end of my baker's twine because I just think it looks kind of cute. And I wanted to show you how I do it with my reverse tweezers. So I make a loop and stick the tweezer through the front of the loop and then pull the free edge out. It's kind of like using it like a crochet needle. Let me show you one more time. We're going to make a loop. I'm going to take my reverse tweezers closed, stick them through the front and grab that baker's twine and then twist and pull, and I get these little knots. Now, I eventually cut those knots off because I end up not liking them at the end of the card, but I still wanted to show you that in case you wanted to learn how to do those little knots. This is a little scrap of glitter paper that I'm going to use with I want to say this is about a 5/8 inch circle punch. It's not very big. It's not an inch. It's slightly smaller. And a little bit of foam squares to pop this little tail up. This bunny needed a tail, didn't he? I think he did, so I think it's super cute. Just going to use my tweezers to help me put that down. And he is ready for the card. I don't do anything else to him, actually. He is perfectly ready to go. Love him. Now for the inside of the card. So many of you ask about insides of cards. Well, since I'm using a craft colored card base, it's a good idea to add a white mat on the inside. But sometimes they can be boring. So what I did was I went back to the stamp set and I pulled out a bunch of the little images. The large carrot, the small carrot, the paw print, and I just stamped them going up the side of the white card base that I used. You did notice that I rounded the top edges as well. Here, I'm doing the same thing. I went back to the Misty so I could use the same ink and stamp it repeatedly. If you were just going to use black for your sentiment, you wouldn't have to have necessarily the stamp positioner, but I want to be able to ink this about 3 or 4 times so I make sure I get a nice dark impression from that distress ink. And I like using the same ink on the card. I think it really ties everything together. All right, all our elements are ready. This is our card base. I'm going to open it up nice and flat. I'm going to take that pink front matte piece that we created and add some art glitter glue and stick that straight down to the front. Of course, this is where you could use dimension, but I kind of feel like since I've used dimension on the bunny and I plan to pop up the sentiment, I'm just going to glue this piece straight down. I love this color combination, pink and pale gray, or the kind of dark navy gray on the front with the craft. I think it's pretty. Same thing for the inside of the card. I'm going to glue down the insert that we created. I like decorating the inside of the cards. I don't do it as often as I really should. I think they look really good like this. All right, now it's time to work on the front. One thing I like to do whenever I've opened that card base up like that is just crease it one more time with my bone folder. I'm adding some dimensional foam to the bunny, just enough to kind of pop him up and hold him in place real good. Now, because I'm putting him on embossed surface, I went ahead and added a lot more dimension than I normally do because that way I know he'll stick down well to the front. I decided to put him center top of this card. I just think it is adorable. And I promise you, this looks a lot like the wall hanging that I saw at Hobby Lobby. I'm just kind of mimicking it on a card front. That's a cool thing to do. Get inspiration everywhere you go. This little sentiment, I wanted Happy Easter to sit underneath the bunny, so that's why I put it there and then trimmed off the excess while I had it in place, so I'd know that the sentiment landed exactly where I wanted it. You could move your sentiment anywhere, but I thought it'd be cute to be centered underneath the bunny. I'm using some foam squares here. Again, more than I normally do because I'm putting it on an embossed surface so it has raised and lowered edges. And just stick that guy in place. And I love how this card is turning out. Except for those knots. Remember I told you I didn't love them? I cut them away, took some art glitter glue, and glued these guys down onto the front. And that was it. That's the whole card completed, and I love how it turned out. If you guys recreate something like this, I hope you guys will come over to our Facebook group called Maymay Made It, and so did I, and share with us your creations. We love to get inspiration from you. And there's lots of inspiration for you over on our page. Hey, thanks so much for watching today, guys. By the way, the supplies for this card will be listed below in the description area. Just click the show more and you'll see all of that pop open and it'll link you to my supplies. Thanks again for watching. Talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.